Voting rights continue to be a huge controversial topic in the state of Georgia, where it appears that its Secretary of State, a man by the name of Brian Kemp, who is also running for governor, is doing everything he can to take certain people off the voter rolls and prevent them from voting. Now, the certain people I'm talking about mostly consists of the minority community, the Black community in Georgia. Now, there have been two main policies implemented in the state of Georgia that have essentially disenfranchised voters. They're overseen by Kemp and have drawn criticism and legal challenges. Georgia's exact match registration verification process and the mass cancellation of inactive voter registrations. So one of the things that's happening, and we've talked about this on the show before, is they're pretending like they're trying to verify the addresses of voters. And so they supposedly sent out these mailers asking people to respond back to verify their address. Many people didn't receive those mailers. I'm guessing that some people probably lost them or saw them and thought it was just junk mail. But either way, tens of thousands of people have been taken off the voter roll. So 53,000 to be specific. Wow. Also, under the policy, information on voter applications must precisely match information on file with the Georgia Department of Driver Services or Social Security Administration. So if there's even a small mistake, so for instance, if there is a missing hyphen in a hyphenated last name, they will be kicked off the voter rolls. Okay.
So that's the one of the two issues. That's the exact match registration. So if it doesn't match perfectly, then they're like, no, you're on hold, and there's all these people that are being put on hold, and they might not be able to vote. And there's a reason why they're doing it. Is it because they're really sticklers for grammar, or they're really worried about rampant voter fraud? There's almost no cases of voter fraud in Georgia. There's 13 in the whole country. It is a minuscule, non-existent problem the Republicans invented to suppress the vote. And wait till you see what percentage this applies to for African Americans.
Yes.
That's the real reason they're doing it.
So first, I want to be clear about what's been going on in the state of Georgia overall when it comes to voters being disenfranchised. This has been going on for a while, okay? It's gotten worse this year because of Kemp and his very tight race with Stacey Abrams for governor. But Kemp's office has canceled over 1.4 million voter registrations since 2012. Nearly 670,000 registrations were canceled in 2017 alone, okay?
So let me be clear about context here. So do you, from time to time, do you need to cancel voter registrations? Yes, why? Because things like people die and they move, and so they're not there anymore. I don't live in New Jersey anymore. You got to clear my name from the voter rolls in New Jersey because I'm in California now, okay? So it's not a thing that is, it doesn't have to be done to do voter purges, okay? But that's why you have to look at the numbers. And is it an extreme number? Who does it target? What has been the effect? And in fact, historically, were a number of states since the Civil Rights Act that would systematically discriminate against minorities. And they would do so by doing voter purges only in certain areas or in certain ways that were meant to affect African Americans more. Now, they had to clear it with the courts before they did it in the past, but this right-wing court said, no, you don't have to clear it anymore. Go back to any discrimination you like, and after you win the elections, they could bring it up and good luck to them, okay? So it's now a joke. So the 1.4 million number since 2012 for Brian Kemp and what he did in Georgia is a huge number, but that pales in comparison to this year. 670,000 in just this year. Now,
in 2017.
I'm sorry, in 2017. Now, why? Now, Brian Kemp is the Secretary of State. He knows that what position he's going to run for, and now in 2018 he does run for it. He's running for governor. He's maintaining the race for himself. So he's getting to make the decisions of which voters to exclude in a race he's in. So everybody's like, well, you got to obviously recuse yourself. He's like, nope. I don't care.
He refuses.
Not only will I not recuse myself, I'll cheat. I'll actively cheat and block your voters.
So he claims, like, we got to get into the demographic numbers, right? Because that's what the most relevant part of this. So it appears that he's specifically targeting the Black community, and the numbers prove that, okay? So Georgia's population is approximately 32% black, and that's according to the US Census. But the list of voter registrations on hold with Kemp's office is nearly 70% black. Gee, I wonder why. And he thinks, well, the way that he's trying to portray this in the media, because of course he's getting a lot of criticism for this, is no, this is nothing more than a made up left-wing conspiracy. That's not what's happening. I'm just trying to ensure that there isn't voter fraud in my state.
Right, so the civil—
Total lie.
Yeah, that is a total lie.
Total lie. So the civil rights group, Color of Change, has called this a return to the Jim Crow Act, or to Jim Crow time period and era that was before the civil rights movement had put legislation that overturned Jim Crow laws across the country. And this exact match scenario actually violates the Voting Rights Act, which the Civil Rights Movement put into law. And what's interesting is the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights under law successfully sued Kemp for doing the same exact thing in 2016, using this exact match scheme where he tried to put 40,000 registrations on hold. So he has a history of doing this. He has a history of being successfully sued for it. So the fact that he wouldn't recuse himself is not only obnoxious, but he knows he has a chance of losing big time, because Stacey Abrams could be the first black woman governor in US history, and they're not ready to give that up at all. And
in Georgia. In Georgia. In Virginia, we had a black governor.
Oh, woman?
Oh, no, not a woman.
Sorry.
Yeah,
woman. Yeah.
Black governor. That's right. She'd be the first.
So she would be the first, and this is a really tight race. And this is, I mean, we have to watch out for this, because there are so many schemes that the Republican Party and the Trump administration have put into effect that are eroding your civil liberties, your civil rights, and they're doing it either under your nose or without mainstream media putting intense focus on something that will take away your rights. I mean, this is just the beginning.
Yeah, no, look, everybody who cares should be outraged. I mean, look, if you're a Republican, are you proud of this? It's like, haha, we get to cheat and we blocked 70% African Americans. And I mean, and then you go around saying, oh, where do you guys get racism from? Now, I know that the main reason Kemp's doing it is because he's a cheater and wants to win, and he'll do it at any cost. And it just so happens that African Americans vote against Republicans. So he's like, then I gotta block African Americans. So I don't know what's in his heart about, does he hate black people? I don't know, maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But it doesn't matter, that his actions affect blacks clearly, decisively, indisputably, disproportionately. It's clearly affecting blacks more. And well, that is a racial and racist outcome. And so, at a bare minimum, he doesn't care. In fact, he revels in it. Right. I don't know if he's like joking, but he's this is also partly racist. He says, no, it's their problem because they didn't adequately fill out the forms. Okay, and I mean, it's just that's a dog whistle. They don't know what they're doing. It's their fault, not my fault. And the Republican Party does this, unfortunately. This is maybe the most brazen case because it affects 70% African Americans, right? Gee, I wonder if that was an accident. That's not remotely an accident. But the Republican Party does this throughout the country, and they study different ways of how do you do voter suppression without saying, hey, I'm just gonna pick black people and Latinos or whoever and make sure they don't get to vote. If you do that, well, then the courts say, okay, that's obviously racist. You're picking black people because they're black. So what do? They've studied all the data. One of the things that they've found is that it turns out that minorities, African Americans most, I think Asians second and Latinos third, have the same name. So there'll be two Doug Jones in the same county. So what they do is they say, all right, we're wiping out all the people with same names. And for whatever reason, as it turns out, that affects whites significantly less than minorities. So it wipes away a lot of minorities disproportionately, and then they go, what? I didn't do it based on race. But they do it all over because they know that is the exact purpose. Here in Georgia, here's another example. Brian Kemp, the well-known cheater, fraud, who's running for governor right now. Another trick he tried to do was closed down the majority of polling stations in a black county,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
And the county eventually was like, no, we're not gonna do it. So he does it on purpose. He picks black counties. He says, okay, if I shut down enough polling stations, I'll get to say, well, there was a couple that were open, but it makes it much harder for you to vote, much more inconvenient, and it makes the lines in the other polling stations way longer. And then you might be late to work and lose your job, et cetera. So it's a way of systematically discriminating against African Americans on purpose. What is that? It's both cheating and being a goddamn racist, which is what Brian Kemp is. I know that conservatives they cry all the time when you point out facts about what they do, but this has clear racist results. That's who Brian Kemp is. If your excuse for him is, yeah, but he has a lust for power, and that's why he did it, not because he hates black people, congratulations.
Well, the thing is, the Republican Party actually hasn't been able to win successfully in, I would say, decades in major races. So they've either resorted to gerrymandering, voter suppression, or something we rarely talk about anymore because it was decided by the governor of Florida and the Supreme Court at the time, was Bush's presidential election in 2000, which was a classic case of voter fraud, of charging people around voter fraud for hanging chads. And then his brother was the governor of Florida, and he just went right through to becoming president of the United States. So the Republican Party hasn't been successfully winning, so they're going all out in their cheating schemes, whether it is colluding with the Russians or practicing systematic racist Jim Crow era strategies to do so.
I just want people who pretend like they're outraged by the disrespect shown by NFL players kneeling to stop. Just please stop pretending like you care about our democracy, you care about what this country stands for, you care about what the soldiers are protecting. You don't care about any of that, because this is the kind of thing you should be outraged about, regardless of which political party is doing it. Now, if Democrats were doing it, we would be outraged. When the DNC was conducting itself the way it was during this past election, we were outraged about that. We criticized Hillary's campaign as a result of that, because that was not okay. But look, we're talking about two different sides that play by two different rules. You have a group of people who want to be principled and want to do the right thing because they actually value democracy. And then you have the other side. To answer your point, Cenk, are Republicans proud of this? Hell yeah, they're proud of this. Yeah. Do you see them, getting upset about it? Do you see them, trying to protect voters in the state of Georgia? Of course they don't. They've been trying to, spread this false narrative of voter fraud since 2012.
Yeah, if somebody came up to me and said, "Hey, we can systematically block white males from voting disproportionately because they vote in higher numbers for Republicans, you want to do it?" I'd say, "Of course not. Who the hell that believes in democracy would want to do that? If you think that they vote more for Republicans, then go convince them to vote for Democrats. That's how you do it. But that's because we actually have integrity, unlike Republicans who don't care about that at all." And what Anna's point is 100% fair. If you're a Republican, are you calling out Brian Kemp? No, you're not.
No, they're still crying about UC Berkeley and students protesting Ben Shapiro. That's what they're crying about.
There are no Republican politicians calling out Brian Kemp for his obvious voter fraud, cheating, racism, all of it. No one calling him out. What happened to the line of logic that Republicans usually use? Well, the moderate Muslims should be calling out the extreme Muslims. Well, moderate Republicans, why aren't you calling out this extreme Republican who's clearly cheating in this election? By the way, his opponent is not just any old Democrat. As Maytha pointed out, she's African American. And then golly gee, he happened to block African American votes and try to limit polling in African American counties in Georgia. What a coincidence. It's not a coincidence, and you know it. You know he's an absolute cheater, and I don't see a single goddamn Republican doing anything about it. Right. In fact, you revel in it. So just admit it. You're part of a party who doesn't like democracy. You like cheating, and that's why you're proud of guys like Brian Kemp. I think I was clear about that. Was I clear? And by the way, Stacey Abrams is a wonderful progressive, and we will have links down below if you're watching this later on YouTube or Facebook, so you can to our website so you can find out more and try to help her. And if you live in Georgia, I don't care if you're African American, any other race, I don't care what you are, you should not stand for this. They're trying to block your vote. You should all show up in record numbers in Georgia and send this Brian Kemp home. Otherwise, he's gonna be your governor, and he's gonna actively oppress you for the entirety of his term. End his career. End his career right now. On the go? Don't worry, we got you covered. You can still listen to TYT at our new podcast network. Find us on Apple Podcasts, the Google Play Store, or at tyt.com/podcast.